אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה יהוה נותן התורה.
Blessed are you, Yahweh, King of the universe, who has separated us from all of the other peoples to give us your holy Torah. Thank you, Abba Kadosh. We're going to learn what is Shabbat. What is the Shabbat? The blessing of this day that is given in the Bible. And why does it have such an importance, the seventh day? In the Ten Commandments, we find the importance of keeping the Shabbat. And it says, you will remember the day of rest, otherwise Shabbat, in order to sanctify it. 6 days you will work, you will do all of your labor, but on the seventh day, in other words Shabbat, you will consecrate it to Yahweh your Elohim, and on that day you will not do any sort of work, because in 6 days Yahweh the Almighty created the heavens and the earth, and He rested on the seventh day. That is why He blessed the day of Shabbat, and He sanctified it. You can find this in Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 12. With the passing of the generations, keeping Shabbat became a sign and symbol of the precepts of our holy Torah. Throughout the long history of the people of Israel, the Hebrews emphasized to keep Shabbat, and many of them would sacrifice their souls for this designated day. Taking this as a foundation, we understand that Shabbat was accepted as a day of rest in the entire world, for the entire world. And every religion otherwise had chosen a day for their rest that was convenient for them. If we look at Genesis and Bereshit, the first book of the Bible, chapter 2, verse 2 says, He rested on the seventh day of all of the work that was done. In other words, He remembered the creation of the world, of the universe. Once we cease our labors, then we also express our faith to the Almighty, He who created the world, the earth, and universe in 6 days. Shabbat is an eternal sign. You can find it in your Bible in Exodus chapter 31, verses 15 through 16. And it says like this, on 6 days work will get done, but the seventh day is a Shabbat, for complete rest, set apart for Yahweh. Whoever does any work on the day of Shabbat must be put to death. The people of Israel are to keep the Shabbat, to observe Shabbat through all their generations as a perpetual covenant. In other words, this is an eternal sign. Shabbat symbolizes the tether and the covenant between the Almighty Creator of the universe and His people, the people of Israel. Let's remember also the exit from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. Shabbat also has a national historic facet. And it says in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15, you are to remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh your Elohim brought you out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, Yahweh your Elohim has ordered you to keep the day of Shabbat. Yahweh our Elohim, the Almighty, has always made a distinction between the profane and the sacred, between work and rest, and even, as we can see, the transformation of slavery into liberty, as it was when the Almighty took our ancestors from Egypt. According to Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 14, it is a day of rest for free men and women, for the servants, and even for animals. And it reads like this, but the seventh day is a Shabbat for Yahweh your Elohim. On it you are not to do any work, not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property, so that you and your male and female servants can rest just as you do. It is evident, my beloved, that all of the creation needs a day of rest. In this way, we can express the idea of equality among human beings and even the animals who serve them as well. Shabbat is a family day. It is a day for family. It is written in the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verse 29. In some Bibles, it appears on chapter 16, verse 29. Look here, that Yahweh has given you the Shabbat. This is why He is providing bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Each of you stay where you are. No one is to leave his place on the 7th day. Of course, it's not a prohibition to go out on this day out of your home, but the Torah is making an emphasis on that the 7th day we need to rest and that we should be with our family. The necessity also that this day we should also administer it, so to speak, since it is 24 hours, that we need to divide it in order to rest so that we can eat, so we can enjoy it in family, so we can congregate, so we can also pass time studying the Torah and speaking about His commandments. During the whole week, we are occupied with all of our tasks, acquiring our sustenance, our studies, etc. And generally speaking, we do not have the ability to reunite with our family, to eat together at home. But once we get together in Shabbat, we have an opportunity that is presented to us to reunite with our family without any pressure and in a tranquil environment. In the book of Isaiah, we find a reinforcement to this idea. Isaiah 58 verse 13 says, "If you hold back your foot on Shabbat from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, if you call Shabbat a delight, Yahweh's holy day, worth honoring, then honor it by not doing your usual things or pursuing your interests or speaking about them." It means that we need to avoid doing any type of task that we usually do during the week in order to immerse ourselves in an environment of true rest and holiness. Shabbat is a spiritual day. During the week, humans are occupied in acquiring all the material things, and they are enslaved because of their work. But on this day, on Shabbat, humans will cease their tasks to dedicate it to the content of spirituality. What is the pleasure of Shabbat? And what do we refer to when we say pleasure of Shabbat or the delight of Shabbat? It is a special day. Every person who keeps the Shabbat, they release something from them that is delightful for their soul in honor to the Almighty powerful keeper and guardian of Shabbat. For example, a meal that is delicious, a very tasteful drink, or a beautiful time of spirituality, reading and analyzing scripture, dressing up, wearing special clothes, a perfume, etc. Now, in Shabbat, we find that the tradition, in Hebrew tradition, there are many practices that beautify this practice and commandment, the commandment of observing the day of rest. As we study in Exodus 31, not only Shamor Shabbat, to keep Shabbat, as Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 says, Zachor Ayom HaShabbat, you shall remember the day of rest. Regarding preparing the day for Shabbat, it is very important to prepare a special banquet or meal, a special food, wear clothing that is festive and special for special occasions, decorative utensils. The study needs to be prepared. The study of the Torah already needs to be prepared. But the important thing to identify is to identify it as the beginning of this day. And this is what is known as the Kiddush, what is used to recognize as the important initiating part of this day. The Kiddush is the time in which the day is sanctified and it is welcomed We bless the Almighty in a very didactic way. We light candles or luminaries to remember, or better said, to commemorate the beginning of this holy day. It is as if we see these holy lights and someone is announcing to us that the day of Shabbat has just initiated. It is certainly necessary that humans need a visualization aid and factor, elemental visual aids, like the decorative utensils that we mentioned, and all of this express the combination of rest and holiness, the holiness and satisfaction of physical delight and the spiritual elevation. All of this creates an environment of Shabbat. All of these combinations reflect our honor to the Almighty, the study of the Bible, the foods, the drinks, the clean clothes, the rest. And regarding the beginning of this very precious day, during the lighting of the luminaries, like we have said, it represents the beginning of Shabbat. These luminaries, through the entire history of the people of Israel, have converted into the symbol upon receiving Shabbat in the home. And like we have said, it is a tradition that beautifies the commandment, which in every home, the luminaries are lit up to mark the beginning of the day of Shabbat. Generally speaking, the woman is the one who is in charge of lighting the candles. And why is that? Why is that so? Well, the woman is the one who spends the most time in her home. She is the one who is in charge of the education of her children and of the general environment at home. The woman is found more often at home than the man. But also the man is allowed to light up the luminaries. In the prayer time of the night of Shabbat, we are used to pronouncing blessings over the family, over the wife, over the husband, over the children. We are accustomed to blessing our children with a special blessing. And we place our hands, the palms of our hands, upon their heads, and we bless every child. First, the male children declaring, Yesimcha Elohim ke Ephraim ve'hi Menashe. May you be like Ephraim and Menashe. And we also bless our girls by saying, Yesimech Elohim ke Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, veLeah. May you be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And the last blessing, since it is found in Numbers chapter 6, Yevarechecha Adonai Yahweh ve'ishmerecha, Yair Yahweh banav elecha bichonecha, Yisa Yahweh banav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May Elohim Yahweh bless you and protect you. May Yahweh show favor and be gracious to you. May Yahweh show you kindness and grant you peace. It is very important that if we have the ability to congregate on Shabbat, that we should, because on Shabbat it is important to assist to or be present in a kahila in order to give our gratitude to the Almighty. On that night, we eat a very special braided bread, which is called challah, and as its origins, it has the special offerings that were made with the flour that the Kohanim, the priests, would elevate on every day of Shabbat. That is where its name comes from. It is very important to do the Oneg Shabbat, which is the festive food for Shabbat. And it is part of this special environment that is signaled in our Holy Torah in Exodus, chapter 15, verse 21 to 30, where it is referring that the people of Israel were found in the desert, and the manna started to descend. Our Holy Torah mentions that on that Friday, they recovered double the portion, In other words, they grabbed an additional quantity of the manna that would be sufficient to last them through the Shabbat. Moses said to them, he told them, this is what Yahweh has said. Tomorrow is a holy Shabbat for Yahweh. Bake what you want to bake, boil what you want to boil, and whatever is left over, set aside and keep for the morning. They set it aside till morning, as Moshe had ordered, and it did not rot or have worms. Moshe said, today eat that, because today is a Shabbat for Yahweh. Today you won't find it in the field. Gather it 6 days, but the seventh day is the Shabbat. On that day, there won't be any. And this is why we bless the Almighty over these 2 breads that are braided. Since from this source is where we derive that there should be a double portion. For the 6th day, this is called lechem mishneh, or the double bread. In order to have a special environment or atmosphere for the dinner of Shabbat, we add music and singing, and those include words of praise and portions from the Torah, which remind us the observance of the day of Shabbat. The Kiddush is that blessing which is special over the wine, and its source is in verse Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. Remember the day of Shabbat in order to sanctify it. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, it says, in order to sanctify it with blessing. In other words, we sanctify it with wine, the entrance of Shabbat. In the Kiddush of the beginning night of Shabbat, we find 3 ideas which resume Shabbat, or summarize Shabbat. To remember the creation of the world, remember the exiting and the leaving Egypt, Mitzrayim, and to sanctify Shabbat among all of the rest of the days, since the people of Israel was chosen from among all of the other people. Additionally, the Kiddush that is done on Friday night, we bless also our Borei Olam for having us been placed by Him on the vine of truth, Yeshua HaMashiach, to carry out and bring a lot of fruit. When the night is approaching on Saturday, we give thanks to our Father for having made a distinction not just of this day, which is a festive day among all the other days, but because as the people of Israel, He set us apart from among all the nations to give us His Torah. And that is why we tell Him, Amavdil bain kodesh lechol, that you have made a separation between what is sacred and what is profane. Regarding the dress code for Shabbat, it is important to make a difference between among from all the other days for the special dressing and garments that we wear during Shabbat. As we read in Isaiah 58, verse 13, that says that you will honor it if you hold back your foot on Shabbat from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, then we understand from this that we should not walk about like all the other days, but truly mark it as a special day and have a time to study the Bible, a biblical study, with all of the family, or it can be a personal study in order to later share it with the rest. In order to realize a special Shabbat, it is very important to be prepared. During the entire week, we prepared, even with the food, a special food or meal in which everything is already prepared, ready for Friday night. We have our clothes are ready and pressed. The home is clean. The food is prepared. The bread has been baked. Shabbat should be the central day and focus of the week. For this day, we should reserve only the most precious things, inasmuch for our meals and our garments, demonstrating our appreciation for this day, since we understand that this precept is a testimony. That is why it is important that the people of Israel has preserved it and keeping the mitzvot, the commandments of the Torah, through the observance of Shabbat and the study of the Torah every week. The delight of Shabbat, after working all week and having honorably applied ourselves during the entire week, the people of Israel will rejoice, being surrounded by their wives, their husbands, their children, elevating a cup with the fruit of the vine to bless the Almighty. There are no lips which have found words, or any writer that has found words in order to describe this joy. It is the reward, the ineffable reward and delight of what is to come in the coming world for the eternity from our Elohim. Regarding the commencement of Shabbat, it is clear that it begins at the beginning of sundown on Friday, and it continues until sundown on Saturday. Shabbat starts inasmuch for women as much for the rest of the people who live in the home. From that moment that the woman has lit the candles, since at that very moment the precepts of the Torah abstain from belachot. It is to abstain yourself from labor. We read and we sing Psalm 92, but what is the real concept of melacha? The Torah says, Sheshet yamim tavod vesita chol melachtecha, vayom hashavi Shabbat bainafash. 6 days you will do all of your labors, all of your work, but on the seventh day it is for rest. Melacha is the condition, the fundamental condition that is related to everything that is related to secular work. It says, the Torah says, you will not do any sort of secular work. How we have expressed, the Shabbat declares the testimony that Elohim is the only creator in this world and all of its contents. The humans dedicate their time and efforts through intelligence and energy and its dispersal of, with the means to an end, with all of the blessings that the Almighty has given him or her to conquest their or achieve their goals. But unfortunately, with all of these efforts, humans tend to forget what is the genuine fountain of their abilities and of their prowesses. In this super forgetful world, the people of Israel were given the task to remember and to proclaim this fundamental truth. The proceeding of power, once they cease their activities on Shabbat, the people of Israel recognize and demonstrate that all of their forces and personal powers proceed only and uniquely from Elohim, the Almighty. We understand that the definition of melacha is an action which demonstrates to humans as dominating or domineering over the world. Once they constructively and creatively employ their intelligences and abilities, the vocabulary melacha, we can prove that it has to do and is related to a work that is secular. In this day, we are prohibited in not doing any sort of labor. Nothing that is going in way of our own mannerisms and ways and desires. For example, moving in according to Jeremiah is where we find that we should not be carrying loads out of our homes on the day of Shabbat, not lighting fire like it is found in Exodus. chapter 35, verse 2, but rather on the contrary, being prepared to be able to enjoy and at the same time take advantage of the maximum time that we have consecrated to our Creator. And regarding the celebration of Shabbat, we need to summarize here the importance of the concept of menucha, which means to rest, not in its negative connotation or physical definition of inactivity, but rather as the discovering of that glory which is reflected by the truth that Yahweh, the Elohim Creator, who placed a purpose in every single one of us, that we should be able to comprehend this richness. The pleasure, the delight, and secret of Shabbat is in the blessing of menucha, in the blessing of rest. Menucha should be translated in practical terms, but therefore we need to receive Shabbat with joy, with singing, with wine, a festive meal and dinner, and through the millenniums of its history. The Shabbat has been the central moment of the week, extending its radiance over the rest of the days. So much so that the rest of the days receive their names according to their placement in relation to Shabbat. For example, Rishon, the first day, Shabbat. Shani, the second day to Shabbat. And like that, successively. The rest of the week, it is raised its desire towards Shabbat, to fix everything, the visits, traveling, everything is done in a way that won't interfere with Shabbat. Shopping is done before time, and small luxuries are acquired in order to venerate the day. Once Friday arrives, the rhythm of the preparations is accelerated, and the head of household assumes the responsibility to have already completed the meal and all of its accompaniments before commencing this Kadosh day. The table is set with a special covering. There is shiny dishware, chalot, wine, the luminaries. The entire family is dressed up with their best garments, with their best clothes, and they are willing to receive this very precious and valuable day. The concept of Shabbat, we correlate the idea and concept of menucha, to rest. In talking about rest, we are not just restricting it to physical rest, but also a spiritual sentiment. This sentiment is born out of the celebration and joy in liberating ourselves from the yoke of the daily exigencies to gain our sustenance. We can also liberate ourselves from the demands of this mechanical world that surrounds us, the phone, the radio, etc. All of this also causes stress over the person until the point that they are enslaved by it. In order to understand the sense of Shabbat, it is necessary to live it and to live and celebrate the experience. A celebration of dinner being joined by family members and friends with their singings and exaltations to the Almighty, all of this is combined in order to create the sensation of Shabbat. If we add the study of Torah in the free intervals during the day, studying Torah, not like an intellectual exercise, but with the purpose of getting closer to the Almighty, this will leave us well equipped once we are done with Shabbat, with the necessary elements to confront the entering week with all of its challenges. Nevertheless, Shabbat is not just limited to a spiritual sense of every person. The Torah disposes that between the precepts of this day, according to Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 14, that your servant and your servants will rest with you. The Torah was given to us in a time during which the servant or slave was generally considered like one more property of the owner, who was dedicated not more and not less to that in which whatever was assigned to him or her. But to contradict this form of thinking, the Torah indicates to us that rest is universal without social differences, including the rest of Shabbat under our responsibility. This includes the foreigner who is living among us. And additionally, our animal, says the Torah. Shabbat protests against enslavement and oppression. Every time we elevate the cup during the Kiddush, blessing the Almighty for the fruit of the vine, we unite in the sense of the creation with the right to liberty. The Torah says, Sheshet Yamim kol melachtecha. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat. Labor is the base of Shabbat. Labor was elevated by the decree of the Almighty. Since labor is not a disgrace, but it is a human honor, it is appreciated. This precept is a precept of the Torah to work and labor during the 6 days. But the seventh day, we need to rest and honor the Almighty. How many centuries passed until the world conceived and received this idea? What difference is there between the civilizations of the Greco-Roman agricultural peoples who perished due to the lack of human rights and the actual democratic systems? How many illusions, miseries, and wars could have been avoided if from a beginning the dignity and honor of labor had been respected? Someone said once, "Great is the work. Therefore, honor he or her who realizes it." Shabbat brings us spiritual liberty. Labor doesn't represent everything. In the same way that labor has the force, the power to emancipate a person, human beings could turn into a slave of their own labor. And we have to be very careful with this. The sign that Elohim gave us so that we could show our emunah, our faith in Him, like Creator, who is an unlimited one, is not the labor itself, but rather the restriction that is auto-determined upon labor. Once you suspend your labor every Shabbat, every Israelite is giving testimony of the power, of the creative power of Elohim. Additionally, the world is showing His own greatness. To anyone who honors the Almighty, He, Yahweh, will honor him. Shabbat is a practice, constant practice, and a preparation for what will be eternity, what will be forever with our Mashiach.